morning, Josh. We're back in here today to talk about you. I'm sure that makes you real nervous, huh?
I'm ecstatic.
But more than that, we're going to talk about EAB and specifically commissioning here at EAB today, right? And what specifically makes our commissioning program here at EAB different, okay? But I want to start out just kind of talking about you, all right? Let's just, talk about Josh for a little bit. I know how much you like to talk about yourself.
Yeah, not very much, but I'll do it for you.
Yeah, appreciate that. So why don't you give us just a little history, especially, you had a lot of good experience before you came to EAB, and it's a funny story about how you kind of got here, right?
Yep.
Because we used to work for you. But I don't want to take no spoiler alerts, right? So why don't we start with that, just kind of your history in the industry, leading up to EAB, and then kind of your take on what happened when you got here, because you and I, it was like the Wild West. But
Absolutely.
Go ahead and tell us about it.
So I started in the industry around January of '99 in performance contracting when it was a thing. So there was when the market was deregulated, so Texas, California, there was a lot of work in the U.S.
Utility market, right?
Utility market. Yeah. So performance contracting was heavily going on. Did that for a while. Got tired of the travel. Then went to work for UT Systems. That's where worked with EAB quite a bit.
Yeah, you were at the med school at the Health Science Center,
yes,
right?
Sir, in the Houston area, basically. And then decided to make the transition. I didn't realize at the time that EAB was starting a commissioning program, but when I approached Galen and he kind of told me about it, it was even seemed like more of a better opportunity even than when I heard about that. So
yeah,
there you go. The discussion was made on the porch of the trailer after a commissioning meeting, and here we are.
Yeah, that was at the Big Dental Branch project.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
So left Friday wearing one hard hat for the client, started Monday at the same project wearing a different hard hat for EAB.
And then you did tab for a very brief period of time, right?
A couple weeks. Commissioning picked up so fast. The initial plan was to have me do tab to learn quite a bit of what was involved directly hands-on, and commissioning the program took off, and that lasted for a few weeks and never
and then what about the day I called you and said, hey, Josh, you know anything about programming Siemens? Because we got some lab testing to do.
So that's actually one of the Siemens and Andover were the two major programs that I have a lot of familiarity with. And so I was happy to do that. Siemens was something that I could do, and it was almost like second nature to me. So it was a fun project for me. I was game for it.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Give us a little history on the lab testing, and because that was one of the first things you did when you came to EAB beyond your 2 weeks at TAB, and then from there, you and I were working on commissioning, right?
Correct. So the lab program in particular and the lab testing. So the program in the lab, we had essentially the sequence and the fans and the units that needed to control a certain way. So not only was it just start stop, it had to have constant adjustments in PID loops and other scenarios within those systems to make sure that the system, which was smaller than a real world system, still needed to respond fast enough to where that was taken out of the equation. Yep. So PID loop control, speed of response, data acquisition was a pretty big deal. You had to get the trending and the data acquisition of the systems down really well. So it was and also as different programming systems came in, the issues that we see on projects every day with integration, we were always integrating new systems into our BAS. So that was always something that we were challenged with, and we were able to overcome, and kind of got to see a different aspect too, not just the performance of the system, but what does it take to get that system into integration with the BAS.
Yeah, and basically you ran the lab testing of all of was at least the initial 5-6 systems that we did.
Yep.
That's been 10, 12 years ago now, that led to what we're well known for today in our lab, our testing lab program around laboratory control systems, right? So
right.
You were the pioneer.
Well, I had some help, but it was definitely a challenge to get that test written originally. And then once we got that done and started to test, and it kind of set the precedence, it was really nice to see how everything in the field really performed in that scenario.
Yeah. And fast forward to today, we're still using a lot of what you came up with, even in our testing protocol today. Like I said, I think it's 12 years later at least. But we got a much bigger lab now.
Yep.
But definitely we're still using the same procedure because it become kind of the industry standard now, right?
Right.
But even the programming and things like that you developed initially, we're still using today. So that's pretty incredible. Testament to your work.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, at the same time that we were working on all that, you and I were playing in the lab sometimes at night and working on other projects during the day, right?
Oh, yeah.
But we had decided we were going to start a commissioning group. And, I want your words. Obviously I can talk about it too, but I want your take on how we came about doing that. I want to know how you remember it.
So as far as the way that it was whenever we started commissioning, or how we kind of developed the program?
Yes to both, right?
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about history, because I want your perspective on how commissioning started here at EAB.
So commissioning started here at EAB because there were clients that we had a really good relationship on the tab side that said, hey, can you do this on the commissioning side? We've got a need. There are certain things that we're not getting that we want to start getting. So we initially developed that around what the competition or our clients are saying they were not getting. So our commissioning program was built on the same core values and fundamentals of tab, the quality, consistency, teamwork. All that was the core of developing that. So we just started to dig in. It was developing all the documentation, developing the program from the ground up. We didn't use boilerplate anything. Everything was custom made the way that EAB does it to support the projects as they are individually, customization wise. And we built the program from the client needs. So as new systems came along that maybe we hadn't seen yet on a specific commissioning project, we developed the documents as the projects came along. So within about 2 or 3 years, we pretty much had a fully developed commissioning program with fully developed documents, because we were very fortunate. We were able to be successful. The clients that we began doing the commissioning with really liked the products that we were providing them, and we kept getting more work, more exposure, and more experience.
We were very fortunate to get some big buildings that otherwise, if we hadn't already had those relationships, we probably wouldn't have been awarded. But we were able to parlay that into helping us to build out that program, especially on the electrical side and everything else like that, right?
Absolutely.
So let's talk through just some of those milestone projects early on. What do you remember working on in the early days?
So the early days was the City of Houston BSL project.
Yeah.
That's the one where the project did not go as planned at the end due to issues on the project, getting systems maybe to function correctly and ultimately get a BSL space that maintained the pressurization throughout all the modes.
Mm-hmm.
So some Siemens representatives, myself and Jimmy with Tab, had a lot of long hours and weeks on that project to finally get it to turn over. So that was the first, just stay on the grind, do what you needed to do to ultimately get that building to pass for the BSL certification.
Yeah, and that was a building that was I think it was like a distribution center that they turned into a BSL-3 lab.
Correct.
Not an ideal situation.
Yes.
At all.
The
And
mechanical.
we were trying to reuse existing equipment and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah,
right?
we had to go in there and change XL and DSL stuff on VFD. So we had to go and tune parts of systems that you normally don't have to, because the initial design did not match the needs that they wanted this project to perform on.
Sure. What was another good one back then? I forgot about the City of Houston lab.
Oh, yeah. We will never forget about that one. So Zyad, for MD Anderson, that's the one where, there was a really good team. The GC, the mechanical, electrical contractors, the owner, everybody made a really good team. So that, in the end, made it a really successful project, because you have to have a whole team that wants the same end to get there, right? If you have just one or two critical parts of the team that aren't pulling their weight, the whole project's going to fail. So it takes everybody kind of having the same goal in mind and performing that way. But that one was a very complex project. The client has specific needs that they have on those. It was a project that had a lot of lab and office support. So the emergency power system was very complex. It had a fuel oil system on it.
Underground fuel oil system.
Underground fuel tanks. So there was a lot of testing that had to be done just during install, after install, after full startup, so functional testing. It was a unique system in the industry in general, not just for us by any means, but it was a unique design. There wasn't another one you could find with that design.
Yep.
The mechanical systems, they had a unique energy recovery system on that project that was one of a kind. So we got to do not only testing here in the lab prior to installing it, just to understand the performance from a micro level, to once they fully installed it at the macro level to truly see the performance of this very large, ERU type system that was a one of a kind as well. So those unique scenarios are pretty much what made that one probably a little more fun than others, just because it's out of the box stuff.
That was a big project.
Yep.
A lot of firsts for our commissioning program. We did fire pumps first, a lot of life safety we hadn't done before, and certainly on the electrical power side, the infrastructure on the power side.
Absolutely.
It was a lot of firsts. So yeah, that was a fun project.
It was.
So what's the next one that stands out in your mind in the history?
So the next one, and it's not just because it was a larger one, it was another one because of the unique complex systems on it, would be the Phillips project.
Sure.
So the Phillips 66 headquarters on the west side of Houston. It had some very unique and complex emergency power systems on that as well.
Yep.
With the way that they did the power distribution. It had an extremely large data center, so we facilitated and fully supported everything from the load bank testing with the rack-mounted load banks. I mean, I think we had what?
Yeah, that was one of the unique jobs where we actually provided the load banks, and we put rack-mounted load banks in there too.
Yeah, I think it was upwards of 100
yeah,
rack-mounted load banks. And so one of the challenges there was not every rack-mounted load bank worked. So now we had scenarios where we had to hurry up and get some more on site so we could finish the test because they had a certain failure rate that occurred. But having that project be successful, right? So it was very complex. It had unique data centers, which was a project within its own, with secondary equipment serving it. The UPS system, which was a very large UPS system that had actually 4 failure points to where you can lose 3 and still be up and running. It had a lot of main tie mains and certain scenarios that allowed that to be unique. So it was a fun project. It was a great electrical contractor on that project, which made getting support on that one good, which is what we needed.
Yeah, and I also think that project, at least for me, it gave us because our group was still very small back then. Yep. There was 4 of us, maybe 5 at that point. 5 at that point. Winning that job, number one, because we had to go up against some pretty established folks in competing with them.
Right.
And then executing the job the way we did, even with a small team, and we still had a lot of other commitments going on with existing clients in the med center. Yep. I think would you say that gave us the confidence we had truly built a successful commissioning program with that. It validated a lot of what we had done up to that point.
Absolutely. So we apparently, we had the confidence of the team that pushed for us to get that job. So we had proven ourselves for them from a tab standpoint and commissioning. Mm-hmm. They knew the individuals supporting it, so they knew that it was going to be successful.
Yep.
One of the things we got out of that, a lot of the processes we have in place were developed live, right? So as we ran into scenarios, running the job, okay, how do we keep track of this? How do we keep track of that? So we were actively changing the process to tweak it just to make sure we didn't miss anything.
Yeah, that was probably one of the first jobs we ever had a large networked lighting control system.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
It had a lot of challenges.
Yep. Fully integrated to the BAS, yep. So individual challenges as well as the integration to the system.
Yeah, absolutely. So since that time, do you feel like there's been any other defining moments or projects that have truly kind of defined the trajectory of the commissioning program?
I think it's just mainly been the relationships we've been building. So we've got a lot of really good relationship with clients, mm-hmm. and not just the clients themselves, but the individuals within those clients. So sure. They might go to a different company or they might move, but we've been able to gain the trust of those clients and the representatives of those clients just throughout the years to organically just keep growing the group. That's been probably one of the biggest things, is kind of seeing that growth, seeing that trust, and growing it that way.
So would you say, or what would you say out of that relationship, that are those relationships that we built, that you think sets EAB apart? Why are those folks loyal to us?
Our core values. I mean, they know that regardless of where they go, whether they go from a healthcare to a K through 12 or the other way around, they're going to get the same level of service on each job. We're going to do what we say we're going to do. If the expected services are provided, they're going to get that same quality and consistency regardless of what the project is.
So what are some things, I mean, I don't want to go through all of the things, we have difference points for commissioning, right? And there's a lot of them.
Yep.
But there's a few key things that we've identified in the commissioning process that are truly unique to EAB.
Okay.
And some of them have been developed over years, right? Over, these projects that we're talking about, and as you guys have grown the team and everything else like that. But what do you think are some of the, one or two key differentiators there that really only exist at EAB, or we're the only ones that we know of that have been able to truly deliver on some of those things?
So I would say the foundation of this is because of our ability to maintain our clients locally. We have a very large local team. Mm-hmm. What that's allowed us to do with with the clients that we're serving and the projects that we're supporting is, these schedules aren't black and white, right? You can't just say, okay, I'm going to schedule to be out here on this day. So our ability to be flexible to meet schedule change demands, it may be equipment startups, it may be functional test readiness. We're able to fully support those projects and be flexible to meet the true schedules of projects.
Sure.
Our relationship with the not only the owners but the contractors and the subs with all the trades, we've been able to build that relationship and trust, and we have a process together when we work on teams together. They know when to call us. They actually call us for support. Hey, let's do some pre-testing. Where are your FPT scripts, which we develop all the documentation that we're going to perform on the project, we develop as early as possible. Mm-hmm. So our ability to pre-test systems, identify issues before they become a true issue, it has been one of the big values we've been able to add to these systems.
Okay. So Josh, we're going to change gears a little bit. That was
okay.
really good, talking about commissioning. But you've been an integral part. I mean, from the day you started at EAB, you've always been about the culture here. Because I think, tell me if I'm wrong, that's why you joined EAB. You saw something special here, right? Mm-hmm. So if you had to describe that culture and what was special to you then, and I think it still is now, because you're always, I'll say you're kind of the voice of reason sometimes, right? When we're looking at things, I can always trust you to look at it. Sometimes from a different angle, but always to question certain things and try to bring out the whole picture. So what about EAB is special to you? Because I think you truly love this place.
I do, and the reason why I approached Galen initially when I did was because anytime I would call on EAB, you were always going to get if you weren't able to be given an answer, by the time you got an answer, because you have to get back to on that, you always got a good response. It was always prompt. The quality of service was always second to none. I still remember my first exposure to EAB was on a project, and I called Chip. There were some flow meters that I could not find in the med school penthouse.
Yeah,
they were. We knew they were there. They were in the piping. Couldn't find them because we wanted to start to get some measurements on the chill water consumption. So I was told, I called Chip. He balanced this a few years ago. He was down the street, said, hey, I'll meet you after lunch. He showed up, never met him before, walked up to the penthouse with me and said, all right, there's one there. He pointed all of those out to me. He said, yeah, they're on a DRL. They were never fixed, but they're covered up by insulation. I was like, wow, you can actually call somebody. They'll come over and support you, and they know exactly they know that building. Yep. And from then on out, that's what I was able to learn is EAB knows the projects better than a lot of times the people building them, and those relationships, long-term, project after project, allows our clients to be able to. Or at the time I was the client, you could always lean on EAB to support you whenever you had a problem, and that's the part that really made me think that's a company I want to work for. Everybody had been here there was a lot of people with a lot of tenure, which means it's a good company. When you got people that have many, many years of service, it's you could always rely on that company to support you, and I wanted to be part of that.
Sure. So, I mean, when we went through this process of trying to kind of articulate, everybody knows EAB is different, right? But we went through a process of trying to kind of figure out what makes us different, right? And I think you've hit on some of those things. But one of the things that I guess we kind of, I wouldn't say we coined the phrase, but it was certainly something that was unique. We had never used the terminology before, was thought leadership,
Okay.
right? And so what do you think, or what is thought leadership to you, knowing, what you know now about EAB? I mean, because you may have not even known some of those things when you first joined the team, but obviously over the, well over a decade now. What are you, 14 years in? 13 years?
So 2011, so
okay,
almost 14.
Yeah. So, over that time period, and as you've moved up and done a lot of tremendous things here, what does thought leadership mean to you?
So thought leadership, I guess, from what I've seen here at EAB, is planning ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of stuff that goes into play with that. The ongoing training, that's one of the big things, right? So it's not just what are we going to do to serve our clients immediately and stay where we are? No, the thought leadership has put it into place to make sure, what are we doing to always improve, to never just be stagnant and be happy where we are. Always, what can we do to be better as a company, to keep growing with the industry as technology changes, and that's just through continual training. Okay. So the investment that EAB puts into to the company, at a minimum monthly when everybody comes in the field for the training, but ongoing with the training center and everything else, that's the part that really the thought leadership goes into play for what comes to my mind first. There are other things that come in just in general with, I'm not going to say transitions from the project team members. What we always want to do, and there's a lot of thought that goes into play when doing this, is if there's changes internally, let's say to the projects that we need to support, the client never sees any shifts, right? Because we always ensure that the team members are fully familiar with the projects, that there's always a seamless transition when we have to add support or remove support from a project. And that takes planning and thought leadership to obtain that.
Yeah. What about our involvement in the industry?
So our involvement in the industry, so going back to the training center, so we're heavily involved with working closely with the leaders in the industry from a contractor standpoint, GC standpoint, just to make sure that we're the forefront of helping set the bar and the expectations for them. What should they expect from TAB? What should they expect from commissioning or CEC services? And a lot of times the bar is easy to get over to them because historically the projects that we serve with them on have resulted in a better product in the end. So when we say this is the way that it should be done based off of standards and other things, which I'll go into in a minute, it seems to resonate a little. It resonates with them because they can put it together and understand from practical experience that they've had with us why certain things need to be done a certain way and what they should expect on all projects, whether we're doing it with them or not. The other one is our involvement just with all the different programs with AABC, ACG, ASHRAE. We've got several team members within EAB on different boards, and involvement just help ensure that the industry is going in the right place, that is going to be better for not just the industry in general, but it's the right move for the clients that we're seeing. Let's be honest, sometimes there's influence that wants to go another way. Maybe it might be dollar based or some reason that might not be in the best interest of the clients that we serve.
Sure.
So we try to always make sure that it's the goals are feasible too, right? I mean, there's some things you got to make sure. We all want certain things to get to a certain point, but the expectations have to be feasible. So
Absolutely.
Input into those organizations as procedures, processes, regulations are changing. It's important that we have a voice with that.
Absolutely. So a couple of the other items, and I'm going to trip you up here because we haven't talked about these before. Ownership mentality means something. I think you kind of hit on that earlier, right? When and it wasn't intentional at that point, but what does ownership mentality mean to you?
So ownership mentality, to me, that's you're not just looking at yourself as an individual. You want to make sure, even if a decision that can be made would benefit you, but if it if it was made, let's talk about manpower support. If that person were to come to you, yes, it would help you out, but it would help this team out a lot more.
What do you think it means to our clients, though?
Well, for the ownership mentality, we take the project, we own it. If they have a problem, we have a problem, and we completely work with them to get a good final product in the end that is fully functional, meets the design intent for whatever reason means that it takes. We work closely with the contractors. We do everything that we can to just to make sure that the product's good. We don't just show up, do our do we need to and pull off. We fully support the project teams to get to that end to make sure that that owner gets a fully functional facility.
Yeah, I would say that we want to ensure the outcome of the project meets what the owner wants, right? And we conduct ourselves like with the owner's interest in mind.
Absolutely.
I don't want to say like the owner, but with the owner's interest in mind, right? So one of the other things that we've kind of defined here at EAB, in addition to that ownership mentality and thought leadership, as far as one of the things that sets EAB apart, and this is across all of our service lines, we kind of call it a universal difference, right? Is practical experience. And I feel like we have a lot of that here. But what does practical experience mean to you?
Well, it means more now than it did, and over the years it becomes more and more important. Mm-hmm. Technology is changing really fast.
Sure.
So practical experience from project to project. The needs of designs the designs themselves might be a couple years old sometimes, right? Just due to the project actually getting to that point. So as technology is changing and we're working on projects actively in the field, seeing what looks like it might work on paper, but getting to the field, practically it's not working due to one of the components. That practical experience day in and day out is what allows us to really be able to not only support the projects that are actively on and helping in troubleshooting and getting those systems functional, but the practical experience also allows us to provide a lot of support even during design reviews up front, because we can identify those while it's still on paper before anything's been bought or installed.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think? I'll just get you to guess. What do you think our cumulative number of years of experience is with the company?
On the commissioning side or tab side?
I would say total.
Man, so let's see here. Let's throw a guess out here. I'm going to say 2,200 years.
I don't think it's that high.
No?
I'll have to go look. Last time I added it up, we were over 1,600. Now it could have changed. We'll get there.
Okay.
But yeah, that's pretty. But it's still pretty significant, right?
It is very significant.
Yeah. So.
And with I'll throw this in there though. With our teamwork environment, those years of experience actually do mean something, because we lean on each other heavily internally. Sure. We talk a lot. We communicate within groups, even though we have different management structures between the groups. We all talk. So those years of experience are actually a really good value that we can take of and benefit that we can address.
So Josh, we when we started the commissioning team here, right? We were primarily mechanical experience, right? Yep. Although we had some electrical experience, I had done some in a previous life, always had an interest in it. But by and large, we had to learn it, right? Yep. We just dug in and did that. We didn't hire an electrical engineer and things like that. We just figured the systems out. Okay. We did the same thing on life safety, lighting, everything else like that. And I think to this day, we've continued to do those as we develop our team. So what I want you to talk about, because we joke about kind of the way we do that, right, versus other people. But let's talk about our approach to that expert knowledge versus team knowledge that we've employed in our commissioning program, and why you think it's part of our success.
So everybody on the commissioning team ends up being very familiar with all systems. So we don't have anybody that's dedicated mechanical, dedicated electrical. We do have experts in mechanical, experts in electrical. But as the individuals are getting more experience and growing within the company, they are getting really good experience with all those systems. I would say, actually came up, talked about this the other day. So I would say once somebody's been with the EAB for about 5 years, they can essentially commission probably between 80 to 85% of the systems. The other 15% or so are going to be more for the experts. The more complex of the systems, the ones where more guidance is needed. That right there, through the internal, the training, the cross training that we do with those systems. Again, there's lots of, all the different manufacturers have really good videos. There's a lot of way to gain information and learn about systems. But that's allowed us to not only support our clients in a way that maintains the expectations on every project, it allows us to even be able to support heavy schedule demands with that, because we can cross cover that much better, because again, most of our team can do a majority of the testing based off of our cross training.
The rest of the industry has the mentality of, or many of the commissioning providers that are out there, our competition,
Yep.
They have experts in each field,
They do.
each expert commissions their areas, right? And they really don't cross train, and they don't cross. I mean, they will to some extent. I mean, depending on who it is, but it's a different mentality than what we have.
Absolutely.
And it causes problems on projects, right? Because then you have to make sure that that expert is available when the project team wants to test those systems. Versus our system, we can always provide manpower that can provide up to a certain level. And then obviously if we need that certain expert level, it's a lot easier for us to fill that in than to just say, hey, we've got to have our electrical guy out here to do all the electrical testing. We don't have to do that.
Not at all. We could fluidly support those projects in a given day with the same person.
Yep. All right, Josh. So the last thing I want to touch on here, because this has been a really good interview. Appreciate your time today, and obviously all your experience and everything. It's been a lot of fun. I mean, you and I got to build the commissioning team, so we can sit here and reminisce about that all day long, right? But I appreciate your perspective to things. We kind of hit on it earlier, but I want to ask it directly. What is it that you love about EAB?
So it all goes back to the City of Houston project. But the biggest thing that I love about EAB is every project that we work on. Yes, I mean, you don't want to lose money on it, right? However, the ultimate goal is to provide that client with a fully functional facility that meets their needs. No matter what project we're on, that is the driving factor. We're able to instill that with the team members, and as a team, it makes us stronger, because we're out there providing full, complete products to the owner. So job satisfaction is there. So that's it segues into that all the way from the expectations, and in the end, you can end your day, end your week, knowing that you were able to give 100% to the clients and the teams that you're serving, without having to sacrifice quality because it's over. We got to we can't do this or we can't do that. That's never an option. So It makes it satisfying.
That's great. Anything else?
The team environment, the family environment. We're growing. We're larger. However, the camaraderie, the team atmosphere is still high, and that's a good thing, right? I mean, that's one of the things that kind of sets us apart too. We have a close-knit teams and a close-knit company that not only do we worry about what's going on at work, we worry about each other outside of work.
Sure. No, that's great. Well, Josh, appreciate your time today.
You got it.
A lot of good feedback, and like I said, good job.
Thanks.